Hi guys again. This is part 2 of our questions. I'll keep moving on. What did you see in South Africa to make you really cringe at the apartheid movement? Basically, did you see anything that just made you sick? If so, what was it?
It's the way that people were limited. They were limited in terms of resources, in terms of education, in terms of everything, basically, especially black people. So, I mean, that just frustrates me that you do find some old people that lived through apartheid. And the only thing they're telling me is that they wanted to be doctors and stuff. But of course, because of apartheid at that time, they couldn't study for what they wanted to. They were limited. Yeah, that is bad. And some of them I've heard stories of abuse that happened because people had no choice where to work, so they had to suffer in silence, and they just had some of them had no options because they just wanted it was a way of living at that time, and it's just sad. The stories you hear, some people getting killed, and how people were forced to fight against each other because of race and other things. It was just they were too limited. That was just sad.
Um, we're both really young during apartheid, so I don't think I really remember seeing anything while I was living through apartheid. But one thing that did really make me cringe or really made me sick about apartheid was a couple of years ago. I actually went with your teacher, Miss Morford, to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was held in captivity for a certain number of years. And we actually went on a tour, and the person who took us on a tour was a former prisoner who actually knew Nelson Mandela. And we saw his cell, we saw where he worked in the rock mines, and that was very emotional for me. I actually started crying. I think just to see, people being separated just because of the color of their skin is really shocking and really scary, especially as a white person, knowing that I would never do that, and can't believe that people thought in their minds that, okay, no, they're black, so obviously they're different. Yes, yeah, we're all different, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't treat people differently because of it, or not give them the same opportunities that you have because they look different than you. And I think that just really, that really hit it home for me. And seeing that, such a great man, such a peaceful man, such a beautiful man was shut down the way he was, and confined because of his views of equality and freedom for everyone. That just, to me, is shocking. As a white person, I can't. Ugh, that makes me sick. Okay.
Yeah. And not only the freedom fighters, but their families as well. So it goes on a large scale. Not only is it a small community somewhere, but it's actually the whole country. And not only the main person, but family members for generations to come. Some people grew up not even knowing their fathers or mother because they lost them during the struggle. But yeah.
Very scary times, I think.
Thank God they're over.
Yeah, definitely. Next question. Did you have to carry a pass around wherever you went?
Not me personally, because I was still too young at that time. But I know my grandfather and mother and grandparents, basically the old people in my home, it used to be called a dom pass, meaning dom, for dom people, and a pass. Basically, they had everything about you, what you're doing, your family, everything about you. So there was no way you could skip the country. There was no way you could go to a different town or travel to another place. You had to report everything you were doing. Limited again. Sad.
I didn't have to carry a pass, and my parents didn't have to carry a pass just for the fact that we were white. So we actually could go wherever we wanted to go, just because of the color of our skin. So we didn't have to carry around a pass. Next question. Were you actually born in South Africa? And did apartheid affect you in any kind of way? What year did you move to South Africa?
Oh no, I was born here. Born and bred. Proudly South African. No reservations whatsoever.
We even have the South African flag behind us.
Yes.
Proud South Africans. I was actually born in South Africa, yes. But I have lived out of the country for a long time. I actually lived in Europe, and I lived in the States for a long period of time. I actually was schooled, and I went to college at the University of Rhode Island. And I actually moved back here with my husband, who's American. We moved back last year. So I've been back for just over a year. And I think we've talked about how apartheid affected us personally and also our families.
And something.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Basically, at that time, because even though apartheid ended in 1994, I was still young, I guess. And at that time, my parents couldn't send me to any school. I had to go to school in the townships. I had to go to schools that were not didn't have white people. Basically, you had to study with people that speak your own language, that are your same color. And yeah, I mean, I couldn't go to private schools whatsoever. And basic most of my English at that time was self-taught, and I could only go to a normal private school, not a private school, but a normal school with other races when I was in grade 8. So that's the only time. So the effects were long, and most of my English was self-taught through reading. And yeah.
Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know
So
that.
that was the effect. It's still happening because you don't find white students going to the township schools. They only go to schools that are privately owned on the other side of town that are more expensive, and because it's just the way it was, and it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, and I think that that inequality, especially on the next question, what was it like living through apartheid? How were you and your family affected by apartheid? How was the transition from apartheid to equality? I think that's what Milena was touching on. That transition, I think, in a way, is still happening. People aren't discriminated against, but unfortunately, because of the lack of education that many black and Indian people receive, because they weren't allowed the proper education, and even if they were willing to learn or willing to teach, they still couldn't teach certain things. They were definitely held down, and I think it's going to take a little while, maybe another generation or so, for us to be fully equal in terms of education. Because I think that's the biggest problem we're facing now in South Africa is the inequality in education, because that's left over. I mean, we're still a very young country. And we're all fighting for equality of education, but I think that that's the biggest thing lingering from apartheid is that inequality of education. Yeah. Okay, next question. If you met a family that was mixed, do you know or think that they as a whole would feel closer to South Africa or Europe? How do whites and blacks treat each other today? And is there still a lot of racism? That's a good question.
No, there's no racism. I don't feel, well, there is some people that, they just feel, you don't feel comfortable around, or they just, the way they speak or their views about things, they just make you feel differently. Putting it lightly, but yeah. But basically, there's not that much of racism, not in public anyway. Because, I mean, if there was still racism, I wouldn't be working at Candace. If there was still racism, I wouldn't be working in a multiracial company. There wouldn't be multiracial schools. Yeah. But I don't think it's, no, not really. There's no more racism from my part.
No, go ahead, sorry.
That's why I actually love the fact that I could mingle with different types of people. It's amazing what you could learn about other people's cultures and their rituals or whatever you call it, but it's interesting.
I think, from my side, I still see racism. Obviously, it's frowned upon, but I think here we're a lot more racially open, and I think in America it's a lot more covert. That you can't say, oh, well, there's a black man, even if it is a black man. But here, it's black and white, we're Indian. We joke about our races, and you make fun of your races in a way, but not in a racially mean way. It's just, yeah, she's black, I'm white, duh. Obviously we can see that, but we're not different because of it, only because of the color of our skin, but we're still equals. And I think that there is racism, and I think that, but that's the kind of racism it is. And unfortunately, I know some whites who are still living in the glory days of what they called apartheid, which is absolutely not a glory day, but for them it was. That still say racial things, and I have to stand up and correct them. And some of the things they say are hurtful, even to me. And I think.
Yeah.
I think there will always be racism. I think no matter what country you go, there's always, all over the world, there's still racial tensions between people, black, white, religious tensions, anything like that. So, I think obviously South Africa's moved incredible leaps and bounds in the short time that we've been a free new country.
Because we embrace our differences. You should see the way we laugh about the different things we do differently. It's quite, we embrace it, and I think it's most importantly a person's choice. You decide, fine, maybe some people were brought up during that time when you're told a black person is inferior, but as you grow up and you mature, you choose. I mean, my grandmother was a domestic worker. I don't see any difference. I actually embrace what I'm going to learn from